Hello there and welcome to week 6. What we're going to do this week is work through lessons 8, 9, and 10. Again, there isn't that much really in lesson 8. And again, it's something that you know and we looked at last week, the Boolean expressions and if statements, and a little bit of if else, okay, and then how that might pertain to a drop-down menu. And then looking at if and then else if. And so those ones, again, something that you're familiar with, looking at the Boolean operators and, or, and not. Again, nothing that's unusual. And a little bit about compound Boolean expressions, so requiring two things to be true or whatever the case is. The last little bit gets you to build an app. It's a color sleuth app, and what it basically does is it presents 4 squares on the screen of different colors. 3 of them are the same, 1 is just slightly off, and so you have to choose the one that doesn't match. And so it goes into a little bit of randomization. How do you randomize the color? Basically playing with the RGB values, and then to switch player turns and so on. So it takes some of the game stuff that you've learned before and uses the if and else if, and also gets you to randomize some colors there. So not a bad game. It's actually kind of interesting. Again, I don't want to make this video longer than it needs to be. I've put the notes, attached the notes that I would generally give out. One of these here. There we are. But again, this is a lot of review, and so you can look through it and understand it. I mean, we know what Booleans are, true or false. A Boolean expression is something that evaluates true or false. We know about the equal sign. One interesting thing in JavaScript is that you can have a triple equal sign. And that triple equal sign is differentiating between 3, say a string, and 3, the integer. So in regular JavaScript, which is kind of unusual, it doesn't do this in Python, doesn't do this in a lot of other languages. If you type in 3, so if you had as a string value and you compared it to 3 as an integer value, JavaScript would actually say that that's true. Python doesn't. If you want to be very specific and make sure that the data type matches, you have to actually use the triple equal sign. So if you do see that, that's where it's down there, that is part of JavaScript. Of course, you have your not equal, greater than, less than or equal to, greater than or equal to. Nothing different here. The idea of a flow chart, so that you've got statement, 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 and then you sort of have your choice here in the diamond, okay, so you're conditional, and then branching to yes or no, and then depending on how it goes. So yeah, you can end up with branching, as you know. This goes into the blocks, right? The blocks just makes it a little bit easier to do. You can just drag them in. A lot of you might be using this. Personally, I like to drag it in, but use the have it come in as the code. All these different colors and stuff start to confuse me, so I prefer it just as the code. But it's nice that you can just drag it in so that you don't have to remember exactly some of these prompt num and things like that. You can just sort of recognize them and put them in. Save some time in typing. But you can work through that example. It's pretty simple. It's just voter verification, checking your age. If you're greater than 18 or greater than or equal to 18, you can vote. If not, you can't vote. Pretty straightforward. And this just goes through the if and else again with the curly braces and so on. I mean, you guys are all familiar with this. This particular one, you can add the little plus to sort of create more and more of them if you want. So pretty straightforward. I think that's almost the same stuff there. 5.9, it goes into the else if. And I believe the else if is not even part of the AP exam. They just do nested if statements. Yeah, so it says there else if is convenient but not required for AP. So you can just do it as nested if kind of thing as you go down. Yeah, you don't need to use else if, but we know how to use else if, and they're just giving you an example there. Obviously, we've talked about this. The order matters because remember, when it's running and evaluating these statements, when it hits one that's true, it runs the code and skips all the rest. So if you said, you're greater than 10 or whatever, greater than 5, that would run, if you were 20, 30, 40, 50, this first line would run. So, Mr. Fleming could see a G or PG movie alone, right? So the order matters, and generally, you go from the most specific to the least specific, if possible, or depending on the value, sort of thing. So you just have to be a little careful about that. I also find that just being careful that you don't skip one, especially greater than or less than. If you don't have the equals there, that can create some problems. So you just always have to be careful that if you want to have it sort of as continuous, that you're including everything. If you say less than 5 and greater than 5, well, then you've missed 5, right? So just be careful of those things. We just talked about that. So the Boolean operators, again, JavaScript has a lot of C formatting, so the and, or, and not, you're familiar with those, and that lets you do sort of two Boolean expressions, right, and then evaluate them together, and obviously you could daisy chain them, add them together, and be able to figure those out. So you can get some complex things, right? So just be careful. They're just going through examples there, misconceptions. When we say if the day is Saturday or Sunday, you can't just do this, right? Day is equal to Saturday or Sunday. We say that in English, but you already know that these have to be complete Boolean statements. So you get a weird answer. You need to make sure that you evaluate both of them equally. The other thing to be careful of is that sometimes we think about and or sort of in a different way in English. So you're just being very careful and running through some examples in your head. Is it really running? So here, you've got age is less than 13 and the age is greater than 65. Okay, because you might say, well, people who get the discount are less than 13 and greater than 65, right? Because you're including both. But you have to be very careful because it has to either be these people. If this is true, it runs, or if this is true, it runs. Because this would require one person to be both under 13 and over 65. I guess mentally and physically you could maybe make those judgments, but in true age-wise, you can't. You can't be both under 13 and over 65, and that's for a particular individual, right? You have to be looking at each case, so that's why we have to use or here. So just be very careful of that. Yeah, there is an order of operations for the Boolean operators, and that's NOA. Okay, not, or, and. So this goes first. Oh, this is actually wrong here. Aha, that's interesting. Sorry, when I look at this here, I'll need to make that little change. This should actually be, I was just saying it's not Noah, it's now. So it's and, not, and or. I'll make sure I make that change there. Interesting. Okay, but yeah, I mean, generally in these AP ones, it doesn't come into play, but there is an order of operations there. All right, so good luck with just another scenario. Okay, they're just going through scenarios here, sorry. Yeah, there we are. So those just showing how that would work, running through a variety of Boolean conditions to make sure that it runs or not runs. All right, so yeah, just work through, like I said, working through those steps there. So, 8 and 9 are not too bad, okay? And then 10's a little bit more involved, but try to make that up because it's quite instructive, okay? Showing you how that works there. Good. Let me know if you've got any questions, and I'll be sure to help you out there.